Greetings, folks, and welcome back to He's Coming. If, like me, you live in the United Americans of statehood, you're probably familiar with March Madness, which starts up today.
Assuming you're watching this the day it comes out.
But if you've never heard of that term, it's basically a really long freakout session over how the 68 D1 college basketball teams do in a giant nationwide tournament. The sports betting crowd loves to throw money at others' predictions for whether this team or that team will win in a matchup and by how much. The status of the tournament is most famously measured and visualized through a bracket, which has since made its way to other game tournaments to track player progress and individual match scores. In a sense, it's kind of like a flowchart. Now, as a college student myself, I can't be bothered to give a damn about college sports. Hell, I can't even spell basketball, but I do enjoy me a good tournament every now and again, and with every good tournament is a good bracket to match. So, I decided to make my own March Madness tournament, but instead of pitting various colleges against each other, I decided to make this political by pitting the presidents of the United States against one another. See, though I may be a politics nerd, I can't generate an easy top 5 or bottom 5 lists for the 45 presidents of the United States on a whim. I'm quite indecisive on who is deserving of this rank and who really ought to outrank whom. The best I've got is a top 2 and a bottom 2 list. So, perhaps I can use this tournament to get a grasp on who my number 3 and number 4 favorites are. And because these men aren't exactly playing each other in a game of basketball,
Which wasn't even invented until after 20 of the nation's 23 presidents had died.
their performances will be judged on my own personal opinions. Basically, whichever president I think was the better one for X or Y reasons will move on to the next round, and their challenger will be eliminated from the tournament. Pretty simple, right? Well, before we get into this low-stakes nerding session, I want to lay out some ground rules. Firstly, those top 2 and bottom 2 presidents from earlier are eliminated, since they already have definitive rankings in my head and would therefore either lose immediately or win every single match, and there's no fun in foregone conclusions. So, that means my 2 favorite presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and my 2 least favorite presidents, James Buchanan and Woodrow Wilson, are automatically disqualified. Rule number 2, no buys allowed. In most tournaments, there's an uneven number of participants, and so some are basically given a pass to the next round automatically, for there's no opponent available for them. I don't want to give any one president an advantage in this tournament, so I had to whittle down my list of 41 participants to 32. That way, every participant has a challenger in the first round, and all bets are off. Rule number 3, no half-term presidents. I think it goes without saying that it's unfair to compare a president who died 3 months into their tenure and a president who served 8 years in office, as the former didn't have much of a chance to do anything before the expiration of their time among the living. So, any president whose term was fewer than 1,000 days in office is automatically disqualified. So say goodbye to William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, James Garfield, Warren Harding, and Gerald Ford. And rule number 4, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama are automatically disqualified due to having been in office too recently. I'd really like to avoid opening 3 very viral cans of worms, and doing so much as mentioning their names to the wrong people is enough to get tomatoes thrown at you. But hey, cutting those 3 out drops our number of participants down to 32. So congratulations to all those who even made it into the tournament. Now just try not to lose in the first round. But wait, I hear you ask, how did you determine who's challenging whom? That's a great question. Firstly, I threw everyone's name into this website, link in description. Each generated team would be one matchup. I then slapped those matchups on the bracket wherever my 1 a.m. brain decided to slap them. And the final result is this. In line with how national sports tournaments use regions to group competing teams, I divided the bracket into 4 sectors, with the most creative of names. So we'll go through this tournament sector by sector and round by round. And now that I've bored you all to death with rules and explanations, let's begin our presidential March Madness tournament. And may the third best president win. Before we get into round 1, there's a few more things I'd like to get out of the way first. For clarification, my judgment criteria for which president is better is based on their presidency only. Their actions before and after their tenure are not taken into consideration. I'll also be considering the national state of affairs during their presidency, even if they had little to do with it. You could consider that unfair, but in hindsight, it became an important determinant in certain matchups. My determinations will also consider presidents' moral lifestyles while in office. If a president was prone to debauchery or scandal while in the Oval Office, they're gonna have a harder time making it through their matchup. And lastly, I should reaffirm that this is all my personal opinion, from the stance of someone living in March 2026, which is when I'm writing this. So yes, hindsight will influence my opinions of certain presidents to varying degrees. And while I tried to avoid getting too ideological when determining who goes on and who doesn't, I can say with certainty that my own political beliefs did at least partially influence my decisions. I tried my best to omit ideology from my list of reasons for why I picked who I picked, but it's not completely absent, and to fully disregard it would be disingenuous on my part. But anyways, before before I shut up for a while, let's get into the actual tournament proceedings. For the matches within the individual sectors, I'll first show the winner of each matchup, and then I'll list on screen a few notes about each contestant that influenced my decision. And if you see this icon, that means the decision was particularly difficult for me, and that it could have reasonably gone either way. And yeah, I guess I'll shut up now. All of my thoughts and stuff will be displayed on screen, and I'll come back in due time for the semi-final round, where the proceedings will be a bit different. Without further ado, let's get started with Sector Blue. Welcome to the two semi-final matches. We started with 32 presidents, and now only 4 remain. Everyone in the tournament has had to win 3 matches in a row to get to this point, and there is only a 10% chance of that occurring. But without further ado, let's get into our first semi-final match. Representing Sector Blue is Dwight D. Eisenhower, going up against Bill Clinton of Sector Red. And for a semi-final match, this decision wasn't all that difficult. Eisenhower wins. See, while both Ike and Bill presided over strong economic periods and, in my opinion, had at least a decent foreign policy, they differed on their moral lifestyles and economic impacts, and Clinton loses on both of these fronts. Firstly, I don't think I need to say much on the morality issue. Eisenhower had solid morals, Clinton didn't. On the second issue, though, I suppose I should clarify what I mean by economic impacts. Basically, Clinton's support of NAFTA, which went into effect during his first term, led to American manufacturing taking a serious hit, as it became much easier for companies to move their factories to Mexico, where they didn't have to pay the workers anywhere near as much as in the States. And Clinton's overturning of certain Reagan-era trade quotas didn't help anything either. Furthermore, his actions regarding the emerging People's Republic of China arguably started a snowball effect with the outsourcing of American production jobs to China. Now, in all fairness to Clinton, it's not like the Rust Belt was doing very well before he took office, but any chances of an economic revival were certainly hampered by some of his actions. Meanwhile, the Rust Belt was alive and flourishing under Eisenhower, with cities like Cleveland and Buffalo still found among the major players. So, by virtue of not enacting bad policies, Eisenhower trounces Clinton on the economic impacts question, only further securing his spot in the finals. And honestly, looking back, the only reason Clinton even made it to the semifinals was because Sector Red was largely devoid of big players, with all of his opponents being, well, duds. But anyways, that's enough dunking on the former comeback kid. Let's move on to our second semifinal match. This match pits Thomas Jefferson of I'm from Sector Green fame against Theodore Roosevelt, the man of the hour back in Sector Purple. And, well, this one was another very difficult choice. Both presidents, fittingly featured alongside Washington and Lincoln on Mount Rushmore, ushered in major paradigm shifts in American politics, and both oversaw dramatic expansions of American influence in the New World. So, really, it was anyone's game, and I ultimately left the final decision up to my gut. And Thomas Jefferson was the name that ran through my head more. So, with that, Theodore Roosevelt's fantastic victory streak comes to an end. Unlike Bill Clinton, he faced off against 2 great opponents, and the Teddy fans who may be watching this should be proud of the many San Juan hills he had to climb in this tournament. It's all come down to this, the final match. Dwight David Eisenhower, the Republican president from 1953 to 1961, versus Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican president from 1801 to 1809. Obviously, choosing a winner would be difficult. I can say, without a doubt, that both Eisenhower and Jefferson would rank in my presidential top 10, if I had one. But let's make things simple and compare the two in their foreign policy, as I'm sick of saying economy, and their foreign policies were both incredibly influential in the progression of American history after their time in office. Barbados. For Jefferson, he put the kibosh on the doings of the Barbary pirates, a victory forever immortalized in the Marines' hymn. However, his main concerns regarding the outside world focused on the United Kingdom and Napoleonic France, with whom our relations were deteriorating. In order to deal with Britain's continued impressment of American sailors, Jefferson passed the Embargo Act of 1807. While intended to economically injure both Britain and France, the law ended up hurting American markets in both the North and the South, and led to a further decline in relations with London and Paris. As for Eisenhower, he and Khrushchev forced the British and French to cease their operations in the Suez Canal in 1956. This has since been viewed as the watershed moment in which the United Kingdom stopped being a superpower, with the United States standing alone as the sole Western superpower. Also, as mentioned before, Eisenhower brought the Korean War to an end, forcing the two sides to an armistice by basically threatening to do what got MacArthur relieved of command. So, in conclusion, both presidents' foreign policies had huge ramifications on the future of Anglo-American relations and the Cold War, respectively. And after all this consideration, I still couldn't determine a winner. So, in the end, I left it up to my gut, and my gut said, Dwight D. Eisenhower wins. And there you have it. Much like in 1945, Ike scores the final victory, taking the first place spot in the March Madness presidential tournament. Thomas Jefferson comes in second place, with Teddy Roosevelt in third and Bill Clinton in fourth. And if you, for whatever reason, want a high-quality version of this chart without all the X's and red lines, I'll leave a link for you to download one in the description. But...
well, if the driver of your school bus runs into a truck, hits a lamppost, drives into a ditch, you don't say, his intentions are good. You get a new bus driver.
Well, that's all I have to say. Looking back, making this video was much more complicated than I'd anticipated. I tried writing a script for every matchup, then I tried doing that stuff quasi-live, then I looked into doing the whole thing as a live stream. None of those options sounded feasible, especially given the little time I have left to get this damn thing edited. And to add insult to insult, I started working on this video a month ago.
Assuming you're watching this around the time it comes out.
And yet I still bit off more than I can metaphorically chew. Such is life, I suppose. This was never meant to be interpreted as some deep dive into any individual presidencies, and I tried to make sure my criteria didn't go much further than the surface level. But, oh well, I guess whether I was successful or not is at your discretion. Now, did this help me find a third, fourth, and fifth favorite president, or something of that sort? Honestly, no. So, congratulations! I've wasted my time, and your time as well. If you're new to these parts, I have quite a few other political history videos that were not a waste of everyone's time.
Or at least I don't think they were.
So feel free to check those out if you're so inclined. And if you're gonna leave your thoughts in the comments, all I can say is, please be respectful of each other's opinions. I don't want any wars started down there. People refusing to respect differing opinions has already burned a lot of this nation's internal goodwill as is. Oh, and remember to drink your water and stop falling over.